hello and welcome back. My name is Kieron Seamons. This is my inky world, and we're going to get on with some inky drawings today. If you would like to join me, if you'd like to get your pen and your paper, your paints, whatever, and do some drawing along with me, it's just a fun, relaxing morning. So, we have been going down a little bit of memory lane, and we've been going through some of the mass amount of cartoons that I have worked on in my life. And some of those have brought up some very lovely memories, as we did Roger Rabbit the other day, from my past. I thought we would try another one. Let's have a look. So today we're going to draw something from a cartoon into a modern version of it. So, for a bit of fun, what's your favourite cartoon? How would you like to draw it? Small intro. This is a cartoon called Treasure. It was made by a company called Sinar, and this was my favourite show. So there you go. That was a little sneak clip of my favourite show. It was called Treasure, and it was about this teenage girl. And a lot of the accents and a lot of the dialogue was all in a very British sound. Let's give a quick kind of guide to. I'm going to have to try and squeeze her in somehow. Let's move her up a little bit. I'm just going to do in a quick kind of guide to try and... I'm not going to draw her very much. I'm just going to basically give me a guide of roughly where she is, because we're going to kind of modernize her anyway. And one thing that I could not remember was what kind of shoes did she wear. How strange. I couldn't actually see it in the actual little clip that I watched. It's just a guide there. So the beautiful thing about this character was that she was a teenage girl, and she lived in a house with her mother and her grandmother, and the grandmother was a star. Even the dialogue from the grandmother was absolutely fantastic. She had the best lines in the whole show. So I'm going to kind of... This is obviously not a copy of the character. That is basically a kind of grown-up version. If I was to draw her today, this is what she would look like. Okay. Now, obviously, one of the beautiful things about the Treasure cartoon show was that the backgrounds were done with a wax pencil. Not a wax pencil, wax crayon. It was done with a wax crayon, and the wax would be rubbed with alcohol to get this kind of smudged effect. It's not very clear on the YouTube film, but if you were to actually see the final show, you would see how beautiful some of the backgrounds are. And we had some amazing people working on that show. And I loved the way that she had two nostrils on one side of her nose. I think that's probably one of the first times I saw that type of character trick. And I loved it. It was such a beautiful design. And I'm trying to remember what the director's name was. But the amazing thing about the director's name was that it'll come to me in a minute. One of the amazing things about this guy's name was that actually there was somebody who came to visit the studio, and he had the same name, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, you must know Kieron, you must know Kieron." And he's like, "No, I don't think so. No, I don't think we've met." And he's like, "What?" And the people were saying the same thing to me. You must know. I can't remember what his name was now. And they said, "Oh, you must know him. He's coming. He's coming. He's coming." And then when we met, we actually realised that we both knew the director, but we had never met. But obviously he had the same name as the director. Why I cannot think of his name. I wonder what's actually written on there. It was on YTV in 2001. 2001. Wow. And the lovely thing about Treasure's character, she always had this down face. She always had this kind of like unhappy about something type of, you know, as you would probably with a lot of kind of teenagers, they've always kind of got some kind of doom and gloom going on in their life. And she had these little lips, which was absolutely delightful. I'm trying to think of all the French Canadian names, like Roberto or Jacques, or I can't think of his name. But it was one of those TV shows. If anybody out there has some of the TV shows, please post them on YouTube. I would love to see some of them. Now, I worked on this show when I was in Shanghai, around the same time that I met my good old friend Dan. And I worked on this show for, I don't know, a year and a half maybe. And it was just the best show. I mean, some of the dialogue in that was absolutely incredible. And like I've said before, I used to, you know, in those days you used to get a cassette, and the cassette would be the dialogue. So you could listen to the dialogue while you were going through the storyboards. And it was just this beautiful experience of kind of imagining the story and listening to the dialogue on your headphones, from these cassettes that used to come from Sinar. I think they later became Cookie Jar. I know that they had some problems and they became Cookie Jar. But that was much later after. I'd worked for Sinar on Calliou. If there's any of those cartoon fans that liked Calliou, I also did Calliou for them, which was another very, very, very popular. I had never heard of it, but when I got the job, I had never heard of Calliou, but it was a very, very, very popular kids book, and and it became a cartoon show, a very popular, very, very, very popular. I think I did 3 seasons of it, 2 seasons of it, I can't remember. And it was a very little bald child. And he was called Calliou, so all the French Canadians, or the French, Canadian people would definitely have known Calliou. So that is basically what Treasure used to look like. What an absolute darling, and in my mind it was a fantastic design and a fantastic concept, the whole show. And she had these lovely wobbly fingers, probably where I got my wobbly fingers from today. You kind of look through your drawing style and pick up little bits along the way. And quite possibly, I got my wide elongate fingers from Treasure. And I was working working in a company called SMEC in Shanghai, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience, and I met lots of great people. I met my good friend Dennis Deegan, and I met Dan as well. And Dan was about 75 years old when he came to work. And the amazing thing about Dan was he was just a regular guy, you know. I mean, you know, a lot of people. He was always, the Chinese people always called him Old Dan. Which I guess is true, you know. He was old Dan. But, you know, I used to sit there and talk with Dan. I loved going out to have coffee with Dan or have a beer with Dan, because Dan would talk about, I remember the days of working with Max Fleischer, or I remember working with Warner Brothers on Bugs Bunny, and he was working on cartoon projects, you know, years and years and years ago. Some of the classics were all worked on by Dan. Droopy the dog was one of them. I used to love Droopy when I was a kid, you know. I used to love watching those old cartoons. And I used to say to Dan, Dan, did you ever work on... Oh, yeah, that was with, you know... Chuck Jones. That was with Chuck Jones in 1965. And I was like, wow, you know. So Dan was one of my favourite people ever, because he just was a regular guy, but to me he was like a superhero, you know. He literally was a superhero. With all the cartoon shows that he had done, he was absolutely such an amazing man. And I still love him to this day. I'm going to actually write. I'm going to write Treasure. And the grandmother was a complete star, and there used to be this very wobbly dog. They used to own this very kind of wobbly. Nobody liked to draw the dog. Everybody was like, "Oh, no, give me the grandmother, or give me the mother," but nobody liked to draw the dog. He was very wobbly and bendy. And I worked with an amazing bunch of people. And there used to be one of the animators used to come in, and he would draw the mother and Treasure. And I always had to bring people in and say, look, you're drawing this wrong, and try to structure the body like this. And it was always this kind of like difficulty of teaching people the new styles. And when you have a cartoon show that is a figure, where it is a person, it's usually more difficult for people. They're quite good at drawing like cartoon rabbits and things like that. Cartoon dogs, but when it comes to people, they quite struggle, and it is quite difficult to make them move well. And I remember at one point I gave out this batch of work, and it came back, and I was just like, wow, who drew this? This is incredible. This has absolutely amazed me. I could not find a fault. And so they said, will you give this person some more work? And I was like, yes, definitely. And when the second batch came in, because, in those days, you kind of, if somebody is really good, it's usually a fluke. They got a very easy scene for them, so they got really into it, very excited by it. But second time round, this guy came back and with another batch of work that was just fantastic. So I had to meet this guy. I had to get him to come in. So I said, oh, this is quite a difficult part. Can you bring him in so I can kind of talk it through with him? And I just wanted to meet this guy. And this guy came in. He was very short. He must have been like 5 foot, but he had this wild hair. And in those days, a lot of the Chinese animators used to think the foreign people were a little bit kind of rubbish at names, so they would come up with a name. Instead of saying, my name is Chu Ping Wong, they would come up with a name like Tank. My name is Tank. My name is Turbo. My name is Speedo. My name, and his name was E.T. E.T. And he was amazing. He was he didn't really like people, and he used to go and rent out a hotel room, and he would take a large batch of animation, and he would do all the work in the hotel rooms. Obviously very, very cheap hotel rooms, and he would just work non-stop until the work was done, and then he'd come and pick up the retakes if there was any, which there almost never was with this guy, E.T. And then he'd pick up the next batch of work. And I worked with this guy for probably whatever Treasure was, a year and a half or something, whatever Treasure. The episodes. And then towards the end, it kind of, I can't remember what her shoes are like, so I'll just kind of make something up. Towards the end, he didn't come to pick up his work. I was like, okay, usual thing is that usually a new show has started and they try to get in on the new show. Because if you finish a show and then go, then the people already have the work, so they would always miss the end of the show. So the ends of these cartoon series were very difficult to finish because people had already left. And so I thought, okay, what's the new show? I knew my mate Dennis had got a new show and they were paying very well, so I thought maybe he's jumped ship to work with Dennis. And so I asked around and said, where's E.T.? I've got this new batch of work for him. And the manager for the company, Joey, called me in and said that E.T. had actually been out with his friends and they were swimming in this kind of big reservoir. And he had got caught in a whatever that's called, a swirl, and it had sucked him down and he had drowned and he had died. And it was a very, 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 very sad loss. Such a fabulous artist. such a great loss. But he was a very big part of the Treasure Show all those years back. I think it was about 97, I think. $1997. What a fantastic year that was. Except for the loss of the wonderful E.T., who will be... It's inevitable that every time I watch that show I will think of the days of meeting E.T. and this strange character who came in that was an amazing animator. But if anybody has this show, please put it on YouTube or somehow get round to sending me a copy of it. I would love to watch it. And it was a very strange format as well. It was like, I think it was like one 10-minute piece and then two 30-second pieces where the dog would have a dream or something like that. And the dog was always drooling and dribbling all over the place. So there is Treasure. She had this lovely golden hair. She had this yellow hair. And a lot of times when she would stand with her hands on her hips. And she had that kind of belly curve, as a lot of teenage girls do. She wears like this little short top, so it shows her belly, and her belly would pop out. And then she'd have this little mini skirt and these long legs. And that was Treasure on Cinar or Cookie Jar, I think they became. So that is today's memory, and what an absolutely beautiful memory it was too. I mean, it really was one of those shows that you really feel very proud to have been a part of. And I do really feel very, very lucky that I was given the chance to work on this cartoon show. And it's a shame, these cartoon shows some of them are so incredibly well done, but you know, in modern times I don't know how they stand up. But then again, a lot of the modern cartoons, I don't really like that everything is kind of like so grown up in these cartoons. It's like, you know, you're watching cartoons that really shouldn't be made for kids. You know, where's all that imagination? And you know, I love the kind of style of like Doraemon and the little blue cat and his kind of like, I love those. Great imagination. Or Mr. Ben was another show that I loved. I loved all those adventure stories, you know. It's like so that, my friends, is the beautiful, the magnificent Treasure. And there is one episode. The one episode is called The Goldfish Murderer and the Big Sleepover. And that's the only episode that I could find on YouTube, but it will give you an idea of the quality of the show. It will give you an idea of how beautifully written that show was. And please, if you have more, put them up. It should not be forgotten about. I didn't really see it promoted when I used to go to the Cannes Film Festivals. It was never promoted. So I don't really know what happened to the show, but it is a classic. In my mind, it's a classic. And I love it very, very, very much. And I have very, very, very fond memories of Treasure in Shanghai. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I would love to hear from you. So send me a comment. Tell me what you think of Treasure. And tell me what you think about anything. Talk to me about anything. I'd love to hear from you. And if you do know what happened to Treasure, and if you do have some of the Treasure episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Have a fantastic day, and I will draw some more for you tomorrow. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.